Let me tell you something that might rattle your soul. Not everyone smiling at your success is celebrating you. Some are secretly hoping you'll trip. And the wildest part? They might be sitting at your dinner table. Family, friends, people you've trusted for years. They love you, but not more than they love feeling like they're ahead of you. Ever had someone congratulate you with a hug that felt more like a WWE chokehold? Yeah. Welcome to secret jealousy. Jealousy doesn't walk into your life wearing a name tag. It doesn't announce itself with fireworks or fanfare. It sneaks in quietly, wearing a familiar face, often dressed like love, wrapped in laughter, and camouflaged by concern. That's what makes it dangerous. It's not the enemy you see coming. It's the one sitting next to you at Sunday dinner. It's the friend who helped you move last summer. It's the sibling who smiled at your engagement, but never truly celebrated it. That's how secret jealousy operates in disguise. One of the first ways it shows up is through what I call compliment confusion. These are compliments laced with quiet contempt. They sound like praise, but feel like punches. You'll hear things like, wow, you're doing well for someone who didn't even finish college. Or must be nice to have all that free time since you don't have real responsibilities like kids. On the surface, these sound harmless. But if you lean in, you'll hear the sting. That sting is not support. It's subtle resentment. See, jealousy doesn't always use words. Sometimes it's what's not said. Ever notice how someone who used to cheer for your smallest wins suddenly goes silent when you make a big move? That's no coincidence. People who are secretly jealous will often go mute in moments that matter most. They'll forget to show up, miss your message, or stay conveniently unavailable when you're being celebrated. Because deep down, your growth unsettles something in them. And if they're not ready to face their own stagnation, it's easier to avoid you altogether. Another sign of hidden jealousy is revisionist history. This is when people constantly remind you of who you used to be. Every time you try to level up, they bring up the version of you that was broken, struggling, or unsure. Why? Because keeping you in your past is easier for them to handle than accepting your present. They'll say things like, don't get ahead of yourself, or remember when you used to. But let me tell you something. Anyone who's committed to your growth will celebrate who you're becoming, not chain you to who you were. There's also that strange shift in energy. The tone changes. The air gets thick. You feel tension in conversations where there used to be ease. They start competing in places you never entered a race. You talk about a promotion and suddenly they're highlighting all their achievements. You share that you've started a business and they mention someone else who did it better, just to dim your light a little. That's not support. That's silent warfare. What's wild is that many people won't even realize they're jealous. It's not always intentional. Jealousy often comes from deep-rooted insecurities and unhealed places. When someone sees you moving forward, it reminds them that they've been standing still. It pricks something inside of them they haven't dealt with. And instead of processing that pain, they redirect it toward you. It's not always malicious, but it is toxic, and it can rot the core of a relationship if left unchecked. And here's where the danger deepens, because we're trained to ignore it. We're taught to say, oh, they didn't mean it, or that's just how they are. But dismissing the signs doesn't protect your peace. It prolongs your pain. If someone consistently makes you feel small in your moments of elevation, that's not humility, that's hostility in disguise. You've got to stop giving people the benefit of the doubt when they've shown you their patterns. Words lie, but behavior is a transcript. And if someone's energy shifts every time you shine, you need to take that seriously. Because when people feel like your success is a threat, they may start sabotaging your confidence in small, unspoken ways. So don't wait for jealousy to scream. Listen when it whispers. Because often the ones who cheer the loudest in public are the ones clapping the softest in private. And if you ignore that tension, you may find yourself surrounded by smiles that are secretly praying for your stumble. Pay attention, because hidden jealousy left unchecked becomes open sabotage in disguise. Your growth doesn't just elevate you, it exposes the insecurities of everyone who's been watching you. The moment you start shifting gears, walking in purpose, stepping into your calling, some people around you begin to feel something they can't quite name. That feeling is discomfort. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because your progress becomes a mirror to their procrastination. Your success reminds them of every dream they delayed, every goal they abandoned, and every risk they were too afraid to take. And that mirror is not flattering. You see, most people are comfortable when everyone is on the same level. Misery loves company, but so does mediocrity. It thrives in the familiarity of sameness. So when you start rising emotionally, spiritually, financially, don't be surprised when people you love start pulling back. It's not always because they hate you. Sometimes it's just because they don't know how to handle what you represent. You've become a living example of what's possible. And that reality forces them to confront the truth that they could have done more, tried harder, pushed further. And not everyone is ready to face that. That's why the energy shifts. The jokes get sharper, the compliments start to feel more like comparisons. Conversations that used to be easy suddenly feel heavy. You'll hear things like, "You've changed," as if growth is a betrayal. But what they're really saying is, "You've changed in a way that makes me uncomfortable with staying the same." And that's not your problem. That's their internal work to do. But here's the danger. When people feel exposed by your light, they may try to dim it just to feel safe again. It's subtle at first. They stop asking about your dreams. They stop showing up when you win. They start suggesting you slow down or not get ahead of yourself. But if you pay attention, you'll realize they're not protecting you, they're protecting their comfort. Because your ambition shines a light on their apathy. Your movement highlights their stagnation. Your courage makes their excuses harder to live with. So instead of rising with you, they may choose to resist you. And that resistance can look like sarcasm, indifference, or passive-aggressive comments masked as concern. The truth is, not everyone clapping for you is happy for you. Some are clapping just loud enough to stay close, but quiet enough not to draw attention to their envy. And it hurts more when it comes from people you've poured into, people you've supported, encouraged, and rooted for. That pain hits different when you realize that someone you love is quietly competing with you instead of cheering for you. But don't let that pain cause you to shrink. Don't dim your light so they can feel comfortable in the dark. You weren't created to play small just to make others feel secure. Your growth is divine. It's a sign that you're moving in alignment with your purpose. And purpose has a cost. One of those costs is separation. As you rise, you will outgrow some people. That's not arrogance, that's evolution. Some relationships can't survive the altitude of your next level because where you're going requires clarity, focus, and peace. And you can't carry dead weight into destiny. You've got to understand that elevation requires insulation. That means protecting your mind, your energy, and your progress from the subtle sabotage of insecure souls. And sometimes that means loving people from a distance, wishing them well while choosing not to carry the emotional burden of their jealousy. That's not being cold, that's being wise. The higher you go, the more visible you become. And visibility attracts both applause and attack. But the people who are for you will adjust to your altitude. They'll grow with you, not guilt you. They'll match your energy, not mock it. So if someone's reaction to your rise is resistance, take it as a sign not to stop, but to keep going. Because your growth isn't the problem, it's the solution. And anyone who's threatened by it was never meant to walk with you into the next chapter. Jealousy rarely announces itself with a grand entrance. It prefers to slip in unnoticed, masked as helpfulness, concern, or casual conversation. That's why it's so dangerous. It works in the shadows. It's not the loud, obvious enemy you can easily identify. No. Secret jealousy works in whispers, side eyes, subtle jabs, and carefully crafted comments that don't look harmful on the surface but leave you questioning yourself afterward. And when it shows up in people you trust, it doesn't just hurt, it confuses you. It causes you to second-guess your progress, your path, and sometimes even your purpose. One of the most common ways jealousy shows up is through subtle sabotage. It's rarely direct. It usually comes through people giving you advice that, when you look back, pushed you away from what you were supposed to be doing. You tell them about a new business idea, and instead of encouragement, they flood you with doubt. Do you really think you're ready for that? Or worse, they start listing all the people who tried the same thing and failed. But here's the twist. They say it out of love. That's the disguise. "I just don't want to see you get hurt," they'll say. But if you look closely, it's not about protecting you. It's about controlling how far you go. Because the higher you rise, the more their own stagnation is exposed. Jealousy also shows up in people who minimize your accomplishments. You share something you've worked hard for, maybe a certification, a promotion, or a big life move. And instead of genuine excitement, you get a lukewarm response. They might nod, change the subject, or quickly mention how so-and-so did that too, as if to say you're not special. That's not love, that's emotional theft. They're stealing your joy in small, consistent doses. You leave the conversation wondering if maybe you are overhyping your own progress. That's how the enemy works, quietly. It doesn't always come to destroy with fire. Sometimes it just wants to drain your confidence, drop by drop, until you start shrinking back into safety. It also shows up when they conveniently forget to support you. You invited them, you tagged them, you texted them the date, and yet somehow they missed your book launch, your business event, or your important celebration, but they were front row for someone else's. That silence is not accidental, it's strategic. Jealousy keeps people from clapping for you in public, because every cheer for you feels like a reminder of what they haven't done. and they'd rather pretend they didn't see it than face that reality. But don't be fooled. Just because they're not reacting doesn't mean they're not watching. They're watching, all right. They're just hoping you trip so they can say, see, I knew it wouldn't last. And then there's the shade, those low-key insults hidden in jokes. They'll say things like, oh, look at you all successful now, with a smirk. Or they'll mock your new habits, your goals, your mindset. But listen closely, that's not humor, that's hostility with a laugh track. Because if someone truly loves you, they don't make a joke out of your transformation. They don't diminish your discipline or make light of your lifestyle shift. But jealous people can't help themselves. They'd rather tease your growth than admit they feel left behind by it. All of this is rooted in one truth. Jealous people don't want you to fail. They just don't want you to succeed more than them. So their goal isn't always destruction, it's distraction. If they can't tear you down, they'll try to slow you down. If they can't beat you outright, they'll try to confuse you, shake your focus, make you question if you're really built for the path you're on. And if you don't recognize these subtle signs, you'll keep letting people close who are quietly working against your momentum. The worst part is that we often feel guilty for seeing it. We tell ourselves, maybe I'm overthinking, or maybe they didn't mean it that way. But discernment is a gift. And if your spirit is unsettled every time they speak into your life, trust that feeling. God gave you intuition for a reason. When someone's love becomes inconsistent the moment your life starts leveling up, that's not your imagination, that's a signal. And ignoring it could cost you clarity, confidence, and time you'll never get back. Don't wait for obvious betrayal. Listen for the quiet sabotage hiding in plain sight. Sometimes the greatest power move isn't confrontation, it's distance. When you realize someone close to you is operating from a place of jealousy, your first instinct might be to confront, to explain, to defend your success and prove your intentions. But the truth is, not every battle is worth your breath. You can't always fix what's broken in someone else's heart, especially when your growth is what triggered the fracture in the first place. Trying to reason with someone who's secretly threatened by your elevation is like explaining fire to someone committed to staying cold. They'll never understand it. And if you're not careful, they'll convince you to lower your flame just so they can stay comfortable. The more you grow, the more you will have to accept that some relationships aren't designed to go the full distance. Not because there's bad blood, but because there's a mismatch in mindset. Some people were only meant to be with you in your struggle season. The moment you step into purpose, clarity, or success, their presence starts to feel heavy. That weight you're carrying, that tension in the room, it's not always your imagination. It's the spiritual friction of trying to drag someone into a season they're not prepared for. And no matter how loyal you are, you can't force readiness. One of the hardest lessons you'll ever learn is how to love people without giving them full access. Just because you've shared history with someone doesn't mean they're entitled to your future. Growth requires boundaries. And sometimes those boundaries look like no longer inviting certain people into your plans, your celebrations, or even your personal process. You're not being petty, you're being wise. Because if every time you open up they minimize your progress or poison your peace, then continuing to keep them close is a form of self-sabotage. You owe it to yourself to protect what you've been building, even if that means letting go of familiar faces. People will accuse you of acting brand new when really you've just stopped accepting behavior that doesn't align with your new mindset. They'll say you've changed, and they're right. You have. You've healed, you've grown, and you've stopped tolerating conversations that drain your vision. That's not arrogance, that's alignment. And anyone who truly loves you should celebrate that shift, not resent it. The ones who start to feel uncomfortable as you rise aren't always your enemies, but they're no longer your safe space either. And that distinction is important. Distance doesn't mean you stop loving them. It just means you've chosen to stop leaking energy, trying to make something work that's already reached its expiration date. You can pray for someone and still block their access. You can wish them well and still move on. You can forgive and still unfollow. Emotional maturity is knowing that peace is more valuable than proximity. Just because someone has known you the longest doesn't mean they know what's best for your next step. And sometimes it's the ones closest to you who carry the sharpest knives. Not out of malice, but out of insecurity they refuse to confront. You'll never walk fully in your calling if you keep trying to carry people who are secretly rooting against your progress. The sad reality is, some people don't want you to grow because they're afraid your growth will leave them behind. And maybe it will. But your loyalty to their comfort should never outweigh your responsibility to your purpose. You were not created to stay small just so other people don't feel intimidated. You were created to stretch, to shine, to evolve. And if that journey costs you some relationships, let it. Better to lose a connection than lose yourself trying to maintain one that's built on fear and resentment. This isn't about being heartless. It's about being intentional. It's about recognizing that not everyone who started with you is equipped for where you're going. So choose peace over proximity, clarity over confusion, and destiny over drama. Outgrowing people doesn't make you a villain. It means you're finally valuing your calling over their comfort. And that's a decision you'll never regret. There's something powerful about realizing that the jealousy coming your way is not just a nuisance, it's a confirmation, a signpost, proof that you're carrying something valuable enough to be watched, envied, and even quietly opposed. Nobody throws stones at an empty tree. No one wastes energy trying to dim a light that isn't shining. So when you feel the weight of jealousy from people you trusted, don't crumble under it. Stand up in it, because jealousy is often the loudest evidence that you're stepping into something bigger than what they expected for you. You have to understand that people don't get jealous of failure. They get jealous of fruit, of impact, of progress. They can't ignore potential they never saw coming. And for some, the hardest thing in the world is to watch someone they thought they had figured out become someone they can't explain anymore. Your growth disrupts the narrative they built in their head about who you were supposed to be. And instead of celebrating your transformation, they get resentful. Not necessarily because they hate you, but because your evolution forces them to confront the fact that they stayed the same. It's easy to pretend jealousy doesn't exist, to dismiss it, to brush it off. But if you're not careful, you'll start believing the negative energy you're feeling is your fault. You'll start shrinking to make people more comfortable, apologizing for your blessings, downplaying your success to avoid awkward silences in the room. That's not humility, that's self-abandonment. You were never meant to apologize for God's favor on your life. You were never meant to hide the evidence of your growth just to avoid making insecure people uncomfortable. That's not your burden to carry. Every time someone shows you they're threatened by your success, you've just received confirmation that what you're doing matters, that your presence is disrupting the norm, that your elevation is too visible to ignore. Jealousy doesn't always come with harsh words or open attacks. It often comes in silence, in avoidance, in friends who used to text you every week suddenly disappearing, in family members who used to ask how you're doing now, avoiding eye contact when your name comes up. That quiet withdrawal, that's not coincidence. That's an emotional reaction to seeing you operate in confidence they haven't yet found for themselves. But don't take it personal. Take it as prophecy. The resistance you're facing isn't just emotional, it's spiritual. When God begins to elevate you, He also begins to expose what can't go with you. The jealousy you're feeling isn't always from bad people. It's from unprepared ones. People who loved you when you were broken, but now feel lost because they can't connect with the healed version of you. People who had influence over the insecure you, but now feel powerless because you've learned to validate yourself. That shift unsettles them. It makes them uncomfortable. And instead of growing with you, they choose to criticize from a distance. The truth is, you can't carry everyone with you. Some people were only assigned to your struggle, not your success. Some were sent to your wilderness, but not your promised land. So when jealousy shows up, don't panic. Don't retaliate. Just recognize it for what it is. A signal that you're moving forward, that what you're building is real, that the impact you're having is undeniable. Jealousy never surrounds the mediocre. It's attracted to the exceptional. And that means you're doing something right. So let the jealousy talk. Let them watch. Let them whisper. Your only job is to keep moving, keep showing up, keep walking what you are called to do. You don't need to defend yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You don't need to convince anyone of your worth when your results speak for themselves. Elevation requires focus, and focus requires knowing when to stop explaining and start executing. At the end of the day, you don't owe anyone an apology for growing. You don't need to carry the emotional weight of their reactions. What you carry is valuable, and if it wasn't, no one would be threatened by it. Let their jealousy be your confirmation, not your limitation. You're not here to fit in. You're here to rise. Let that rise continue, no matter who gets uncomfortable watching it. If this hit home for you, share it. Somebody else is surrounded by smiling saboteurs and doesn't even know it yet. Subscribe for more truth that challenges, heals, and empowers. And remember, God didn't raise you up to fit in. He raised you to stand out. Keep walking. They're watching for a reason.